All right. Hey guys, there was a viewer suggestion on my last game that I released of these to potentially have a post-game interview with my opponent. I don't think that's a realistic thing many times, but I do have a working relationship with Alcaris here, and he agreed to sit down and chat with me about this game, so I've got that here for you guys now. Do you want to say hi?
Hey, Hooks. Good to meet you.
Yeah. So we've just spoken a bunch offline that we're not recording here, but your comments were mirrored my comments, which is that was a surprising outcome by and large.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably one of the more back and forth games I've played in Old World. I definitely thought I was winning. And you can hear from some of my commentary, I'm like, okay, I'm feeling really good about this. And then 10 turns later, oh my God, I am so screwed.
So, okay, do you want to pick apart how and where? Like, okay, for me, some of the things I looked at post-game, and the footage playing right now on the background is me doing the post-game, post-mortem of this, trying to figure out kind of what happened, the types of things that were there. I had some questions for you. We could start with my questions. We could start with a general recap. We could start anywhere you like. Where would you like to start?
Let's just dive right into the questions.
Okay. How many inquiries did you build in that game?
Oh my God. I don't know the exact count because I can't access the save file now, but it must have been in like 30 or 40 or something.
Okay, that's what I thought. I had 24 inquiries built in my capital, and I don't have a Sage family. So that's 24 inquiries only from a scholar. And this goes with my general thought right now that I am hoping inquiries will be changed. I think they should be a scholar, an event unlocked by scholars, and should be buildable in any city and should be lower impact, as in more production for less science. Because I do like the idea that you can convert the output of your empire into science, but I think right now it's kind of a has or has not kind of problem with inquiries, which is you cannot compete with players who have inquiries when you do not have them yourself.
Especially in long games where you can't go kill the inquiry city. I had marble in my inquiry site, and I was deliberately scouting for marble for my sage's seat. I found it, and then I think I built like monks, got to elder monks there, just anything that would give me civics. Yeah. It was pumping out inquiry 2 every inquiry 4, the legendary one, every 2 turns.
Yeah.
So it built, and I think the crazy thing about inquiry is it gives you a culture every time you finish inquiry. So
does it?
Just snowballs, yeah.
No, it does not.
Yeah, it does. You get a culture plus 1 culture to the city that's permanent.
No, that's just the first one. That's like every project, right?
Is it?
Yeah.
I think it stacks.
I will have to check after, because I believe you were wrong. I believe it's how like the first forum gives you gives you 1 civic per turn permanently. But the second forum of the same forum's the wrong one for this, because forums are not projects. Man, I don't think so. But I could be wrong. If you're right, that's kind of weird. But I guess that's possible that it could be true that you could do that. I guess I could check somewhere. Man, I want to know now.
I'm loading up a save.
Okay, please do. Because I thought it was just the first project gave you the permanent yields of it. Everything else was just the temporary yields, is what I thought for projects. But that's interesting. So you're in the 30s or 40s.
It might even be higher again. I can't open the save, so.
Yeah, and I had no idea that I was at 24 in the capital, because that seems like a crazy number in the capital. We only played 100 and whatever it was, 130 turns or something.
No, it is definitely 1 culture per turn.
Wow.
So 1 culture per completed inquiry. So here in this one, I've got 9 inquiries completed in this city, and it's plus 9 culture from 9 completed inquiries.
Okay,
let's
put this in perspective. So sometimes I feel like I'm not talking to myself, but sometimes the responses I get are things like, "I don't agree with you, Filthy. I think you're wrong here." What are your thoughts on inquiry? How do you feel about that project?
So strong.
Yeah, right? Okay. So I'm not alone in this. So not entirely alone. There's at least 2 of us anyways. Okay. Yeah. I think so your rough strategy, if I can summarize as your opponent, was something like unstoppable pyramids as Egypt, into a rush for Kushite Cav, or rather your unique unit as soon as possible and your tier 2 unique unit as soon as possible afterwards. I think the Egyptian unique unit is one of the best, because I think it fills a role that is very difficult to fill otherwise tech-wise. And I think it's quite a powerful role, which is this game with its tile-based fighting, your limitation on attacking people, You have infinite routes if your opponent's pieces are next to each other. So really the limiting factor for killing things is the number of tiles that you can attack a position from and get it low enough to kill it with a horse. And having some ranged makes that much more repeatable for the tiles available.
Yeah, and I think the range tech tree is just awkward to get past archers. And so having an 8 strength ranged unit is really strong. I really like Babylon, Egypt, and Persia because they have the 3 ranged unique units.
Yes. And I think even more than awkward, I think if you compare it, your comparable tier 2 tech for military units are axes, spears, chariots, and archers. Those are the same combat strength, right? But archers is the most expensive tech. It's the next tier of tech for some reason, which has never really made a whole lot of sense to me.
Apparently there used to be archer rushes back in the day, and that's where it got bumped up. That was before I really played the game, but that's what I hear from the lore.
Gotcha. I also find the archer tech tree by and large to be the worst tech tree later, with top tech, the bottom tech being onagers and ranges, and I feel like ranges are essential. So anything immediately, like I don't even tech that for onagers. I tech it for the military production from ranges. And then everything else of that is just quick after. You get the quick crossbow, the quick, whatever you want from that period of that stuff. And the top of the tech tree is the route unit, the cataphract, which is just...
Yeah. So my strategy, I think you've got it exactly right. Like early pyramids into you get to 6 laws very quickly, use Kushites to hold, and then beeline cataphract. I think we were playing this game and they increased the cost midway through, right, of those late techs. So the line was a little slower than I would have liked, but I still went for it as much as possible, along with picking up Portcullis for Spymaster very early because it's actually significant science gain. I think when I assigned my Spymaster, I went from 32 to 52 science.
Oh wow! Okay, based on what? That's really interesting because I didn't realize. I assumed you had gone late Spymaster. So tell me. So how does the Spymaster's stats equate to yields? What is giving you science from the Spymaster?
So Spymaster Wisdom, so I actually set my heir, who I had been training for Wisdom, as my Spymaster, and my heir already loved me, and because once you get to, I think, plus 100 opinion, there's plus 50% yields, and then plus 200 opinion, you can get plus 100% yields, and that applies to Spymaster. So if you've got like a consort, Spymaster, or an heir that loves you, anyone who loves you and has high wisdom should just be your Spymaster. It's insane amounts of tech early on.
Very interesting. I'm sorry to change topics on you. I just happened to catch a look at the video that I'm running in the background as we're talking about this. I'm hovering over Inquiry, and I hover it, and it says +1 per year. And I've got 3 here in this city for some reason, in this particular one. I don't know why. But when you saw that, it wasn't that it said like +9 per year. It just says +1 per year, and you hover, and it says 3.
Yeah.
And then when you break it down, when you hover like the culture from your city yield, it shows Inquiry is giving you whatever your number is.
9. Yep.
Okay. Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah. So that's interesting about Spymaster. I also built a I also teched that in this game at one point. I can't remember exactly what my rationale was because I feel like this game doesn't have a lot of tech catch-ups, right? There's very little times in the game that I can be like, hey, I'm going to forego something, be it a military unit or worker or an improvement or something, and instead invest in tech. It's very difficult to do that.
Yeah, city science I find is just hard to build. It requires so much investment. Libraries are in a godforsaken part of the tech tree that you never want to go to. Yeah. And by the time you go there, it's way too late.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, specialists are honestly going to power. But I mean, the other problem is discontent reduces science output per cities. So it's just like, okay, cool. I'm now 50% less of what I was getting, and it was already crap. So,
did you go Tyranny or
Tyranny?
That's interesting. I did not go Tyranny in this game. I
thought about Constitution, but like most of my units were on my territory, and it's just still so much money.
I built so some of the other questions I had prepared for you. I wondered about the total inquiry count. I wondered about your total yields per turn at the end. I don't have military yields because I didn't think to cancel all my units and then look at that. But what were and you linked this to me so I can see this. So if I'm clicking on the link you sent me here. So you were making 208 gold per turn at the end here. I was making 277. You're making 189 food per turn. I was making 129. You're making 260 iron. I was making 450. You're making 320 stone. I was making 240. You're making 124 wood. I was making 278. You're making 69 orders, and I was making 104. Science, I was at 132 at the end. You were at 138, and civics, you were at 291. I was at 286. So I was kind of wondering about our relative investment. The food gap makes a lot of sense. I didn't even bother starting towards food until I got much closer to cataphracts. The food is one of the limiting factors for you in building Kushites, right? Like that's a cost of that. So that makes sense. I invested heavily in iron and realized midway through this game that my unique unit was useless and I was building it. I was thinking of it mentally as a better axe, and it turns out it's a worse mace. I didn't realize that. So like this game clarified that relationship for me. It's a more expensive maceman with abilities that basically don't make it any better than a mace, which is kind of weird.
Yeah. I haven't played Rome that much. But yeah, the Legionaries, I don't really know where to slot them in because
late game infantry isn't particularly good.
It's not great, right? Yeah, you don't want them.
Yeah. And that's because they can't stand up to cav.
They don't ignore zone of control anymore, so it's just like that used to be a great thing where you could just use them as infantry. That's kind of like a
but even then
horse unit.
They don't have flanking bonuses. They don't route. They don't do a ton of damage. Like this game for me, and I'm sure the viewers who have watched all these turns are going to be able to reflect on this, was a series of frustrating military engagements. Just like 50 turns of all my units do 2 damage to his units and all of his units do 8 damage to my units kind of deal,
I found finally found somewhere in my VOD where I had that city open. I had 44 inquiries completed in my Sage's cap. And I think I did 3 in my capital because I had a scholar leader, but I needed more military production, so I didn't do that many. So
that makes sense. So you're probably 47 inquiries. So I don't know, as I get more involved in this game and I get I'm getting better, as you were kind enough to say to me before we started this recording, is I'm getting better and you're watching as I get better, and that's fun for you to watch. It's fun for me to be experiencing, but some things become more clear as you become better, and the science not having a catch-up mechanic is really painful. And I think
there is a catch-up mechanic, and
it's tech steal. Yeah, but the investment to get into that, it's like 5 techs, right? It's
metaphysics and then cartography, which also requires navigation
and drama. Drama is the other one, because you don't need drama elsewhere unless you happen to have good tech.
You definitely want drama. I think I originally, when I started playing the game, did not like drama. I was like, why would I ever take this tech? Greece starts with it. This is horrible. But I've grown on drama just because Portcullis for that early spy master is such a huge buff to your science. Drama is a gating factor for that, and the free settler is actually really nice. So
yeah, I think what your logic is totally sound on that. Although I find the free settler to be situational based on if you have high science yields and medium food yield, then yeah, it's a very valuable tech card. If you have good food and weak science, it's a very weak tech card. Right.
Yeah, the Odeon also helps in terms of your second or third cities, where you want your UU to be produced and you need to get to strong. Having an Odeon in a theater can help make that happen much earlier than otherwise.
Yep, agree with that 100%. So let's see. The other thing that really popped out to me when I postmortem this and looked around was our number of specialists per city. I'm something between 2 and 3 times as many specialists as you per city on average.
Yeah, I did not build enough specialists, especially production-wise. I think you did an incredible job with officers. I only realized it very late in the game, and I was like, oh, shit. I remember, I think, looking in with my agent, be like, wait, why is there 50 production? And I was like, there's 68 production. And it's like, holy crap. And I just had not invested in it. You attacked, I think, your attack around turn 105 was a little earlier than I would have liked, and I always felt like I was on the back foot in terms of I need more military units. I don't have time to invest in specialists. I don't really know how to trade off. Judge governors can go a long way, but I just didn't have judge governors for the families I wanted specialists out of. How are you building specialists? Are you just hard building them? Are you judge building them? Or
well, I'm not going to ignore that question. I'm going to just circle back to it in just a quick second, which is I was curious because I know I had agents across I had some pretty stupid ambitions. At one point I had the give family luxury ambition, and another time I had 6 agent ambition. And I initially thought the 6 agent ambition could be met by establishing 6 agent networks as opposed to having 6 agents, and it cannot. It requires 6 agents. Yep. So I had some agents in some of your cities that I really didn't want, like hero agents that are giving me by the way, I hate the fact that schemers are good. They give quite nice yields, and anything not a schemer gives absolutely trash yields. It's so weird. Yep. But anyways, so one of the questions I had from that is I saw one of your cities was building council project nearly permanently.
Yeah, I mean, I switched to council when the war started. That's because I just did not, maybe I should have been building specialists then. I just was in full war footing. I also was, I mean, I tried a weird thing with my economy this game where I started doing Holy War and Trade League, which let me build cataphracts every turn, which is how I kind of broke that initial attack.
Oh, I need some details of a couple of these things. So tell Holy War and Trade League. I thought Holy War was random promotion.
It is random promotion, which is amazing, by the way, because you don't even have to assign the promotion.
I want to talk about that too. I mentioned that later, but keep going, yes, please.
Yeah. But the other thing it does is it lets you buy military units with gold in cities that have your state religion.
Gotcha. Okay. So you were full on, is it buy or rush?
It is essentially rush with gold.
Yeah, okay. So it's using the rush mechanic though. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and it scales, which means it does increase in happiness. And I started having serious family issues because I think I'd rushed out like, I don't know, 20, 30 cataphracts, and that discontent added up.
That's interesting. So that's where some of your units are coming. I did wonder about that. Okay. So by default then, were you ever resource starved, like to the point where you were unable to start units because you did not have enough of the resource?
No, but I mean, once I got Trade League, I was selling everything every turn and then converting that into gold and then using that to buy cataphracts. That's why every city was, apart from cities that were producing, every city was on council, because council gives you gold, civics, and training.
Do you have any sense of, that's a really interesting strategy. I hadn't even thought to attempt to do that as a whole. Do you have any sense of what that conversion rate looks like?
It's not great. And I think longer term specialists are a better payoff, but I think when you're going all in at the end and you want to like kill off an opponent, or like the payoff for the specialist doesn't make any sense because the game is over one way or the other. I think I just did it a little bit too early. I pushed in and attacked with everything on council, turn 105, and I needed to get a killing blow, and I just did not. I took the city and I was like, okay, this is great.
My internal thought process was, this looks very close to a killing blow. So I mean, you might be right, but it was within like a hairline whisper of like a not quite there.
Yeah, no, it was super close, and I think that all in just sort of failed because I went all in with council and I was like, okay, I've stopped all my workers. My workers have not done anything. They've just been standing there or they've been chopping wood so I can sell the wood. I over chopped wood as well because I was like, I need wood because I need gold. So I'm going to clear this wood and be like, it's never growing back. Oh no.
I saw you chopping because you get way too much sight in this game for free, basically. And I'm like, he must be low on the wood to start something, but I couldn't figure out.
I just needed money. The crazy thing about Trade League is it lets you sell at the same price you buy. So now all resources become completely fungible, and your economy gets really warped. I don't actually like what it does to the economy because suddenly like your entire production balance doesn't matter. It's just build whatever gives you the most. I think I even spreadsheeted out like building a lumber mill for 5 wood on flat land, which is terrible. You normally would never want to build that, was actually the best thing I could do because the cost of wood was high enough that was actually profitable in like a turn or two. It paid back. And I was like, this is insane.
What's Trade League up against? What's the competing law?
I think it's Pilgrim, or I don't even remember. Let me check.
Okay, that's really interesting. It's really interesting.
Holy War is against Pilgrimage, and Pilgrimage is like what? I don't even know why.
Okay. For me, I had serious happiness issues in the mid game. I was curious about your religious choices too. So you went culture, science, and production.
Yeah. So I was trying to do a strategy that did not really work because I could not maintain happiness across all 4 religions. I was just trying to take Judaism, then I got an event for Zoroastrianism, and then it just kind of snowballed from there. I wasn't trying to take all 4, but I was trying to do a tolerance dualism play. From there, dualism is kind of insane. It gives you +1 science per city for every other religion you have.
Okay.
So
you could have got like potentially +3 essentially for
exactly. Yeah. And or with like the pagan religion 4, so per city. So that's actually a lot of science. Culture. The culture one is actually pretty nice in terms of just getting extra culture out of there.
Yeah, you had, I don't remember the tech timing you had. I assume this was, again, part of your Sage Seed stuff, but your initial Kushite calves showing up, which is the tier 2 version of your unique unit, was extremely early. Like for me, it shut down any chance of pushing that I might have had because I'm like, okay, I'm starting to get a decent number of units here. I've got okay production. I'm starting to look at your stuff. And then I see that unit roll out and I'm like, oh, I don't have any chance of pushing in anymore.
Yeah, I beelined for them with pyramids. Getting 6 laws is not too bad. With Inquiry Pump, getting the 6 techs to get the 6 laws isn't too bad, especially since there's a lot of cheap laws out there. Just for reference, the opposite of Trade League is autarky, which gives you 20% output on mines, quarries, and lumber mills, and then also can build horses.
Yeah, I had that.
Horse units everywhere. But it costs science upkeep, which is just horrible.
Well, I got it so late that I didn't care, right?
Yeah.
Once I have cataphract tech, I don't know if I care about science again.
Yeah. What made you go Polyvolley first over cataphract time?
Because the timing to pick... So I had So my tech was behind yours all game long, and I felt like I was catching up all game long. And initially, as I said, I made some big mistakes this game. One of the big mistakes was my conceptualization of Hystastas was wrong. I was seeing them as better axes, and in fact, they are more expensive maces that don't do anything better. So I spent a lot of time figuring out my iron production to be able to be building these things. And I didn't have this crazy trade league economy where all things were equal. My economy was driven by things. So part of my answer to your question about specialists was when I could not build military units because of things like limited resource to build that, then that's a decent time to invest in a specialist. So part of that was for me there. Part of it was, of course, the judge stuff. I had a leader governor synergy that worked out really nicely on that. That resource-rich coastal city. Mm-hmm. I think I had a leader who came out as a net leader, and then a governor who came out as a net leader.
Oh wow!
And so that was generating. And I think I had upgraded, and I also had the luxury ambition at one point to gift like 6 luxuries to families that I took. So I had upgraded a number of luxuries in that city. So that city was pumping gold for a while, which let me really feed judge leaders or judge governors for elder specialists.
Yeah, I think I forgot about even building pearls there because that was my settler production city because of the good food. But then I don't think I even went and got those pearls because none of my families wanted pearls.
Yep.
And half my family's luxuries weren't even available on the map. There was no salt, which was just horrible.
I hate the fact that all luxuries are not available on the maps that your families want, for sure. I had happiness issues super bad. I assumed your religion was helping you with that.
It was, except for then the other 4 religions were not happy. So it was actually the other 3 religions were not happy, and it was just impossible. And families were going the wrong religion and getting really pissed off. And I was like, oh, I also had happiness issues towards the end.
I had a ragey turn where one of my families converted to Judaism, but I had no cities that were Jewish. And only one member of that family was Jewish. And I don't know how he became Jewish.
Egyptian sympathizers.
Yeah, and I'm just like, are you fucking kidding me? So I eventually I eventually solved this problem. It took me forever to figure out how, but I eventually solved this by building a shrine. I switched laws to shrine so I could build unlimited shrines, and then forced a pagan religion. And then that fixed my happiness globally for all of my families, by essentially forcing the conversion of everybody. So I don't know how it determines what character is religious or not, but I figured if every one of my cities was pagan or nothing, or rather in this case, every single city was pagan, the bulk of my family members would be being born pagan or at least converting to paganism relatively quickly.
I think for nations that have strong shrines like Rome, which has incredible shrines, polytheism actually is really, really good because you can get 2 extra sources of training on every city with those 2 shrines, with the lumber mill shrine, which is kind of awkward to use, and then the straight up +2 shrine of Mars, I think.
Yeah. I think there's better one. I think I actually think Persia does it slightly better with the order shrine, but yes, I agree that the Mars, the shrine of Mars, the training shrine was very powerful. I got to it late. I figured that out late because I tried to get one of the other religions because I'm like, I don't want late game to go into this problem where I don't have religion and my opponent does. And I teched metaphysics, not because I wanted it at the time, but because it was a prerequisite for the 3rd religion. And I had all the prerequisites knocked off the 3rd religion or Christianity, except for the fact I didn't understand that one Jewish city meant one of my cities had to be Jewish. And I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Yeah. Like you talk about accidentally snowballing to all the religions is exactly what happened because I couldn't get into them and I attempted to get into them at one point. So let's see, what else did, from my perspective, what did you think of mangonels?
Is that how you say it?
I Googled that shit and played it to myself twice. Okay. And I think it's
mangonels, which is how I was.
Yeah, that's how I was saying it too. But apparently it has 2. It's spelled with 1 G, but that sound is in there twice. It's mangonel apparently, which is so weird.
Yeah, I mean, they die very easily to poly and cataphracts.
Everything died easily to cataphracts.
The last turn there, I thought they were safe in those forts. I was like, oh, I've got all these mangonels. on forts, and then I was like, oh, I totally should have moved them back over the river. I was trying to fortress Egypt at the end because I was going for a point victory. I don't know when you realized I was going for a point victory.
As soon as you pulled back.
Yeah. Okay. That was too strong a telegraph. I should have started the point victory play 10 turns earlier when I was pressing in.
Hanging Gardens was a big tell too. Like, I mean, like, I think it was a turn after you pulled back. You started Hanging Gardens a turn of, I can't remember which now, but like, there's no way at that stage in the game you care about Hanging Gardens. So as soon as that low hanging fruit goes, I mean, it's totally clear.
Yeah, I think I should have done it earlier. I didn't realize that was my win condition. I thought I was going to win through military force, and
I thought you were too. I'm not sure that at that point it matters what your win condition is there, because at no point when I have finally military parity, it's not like I'm going to play differently. Well, not necessarily dead, but like it's always going to be combat from there. So like if you win because of that, that's happening in the background of your winning or at least maintaining militarily. Because
I wonder, had I pulled the mangonels back over the river, I probably still would have lost the city and had a hell of a time reclaiming the city.
Late game units seem, when your order count starts getting very high, unit mobility seems insane. And I do not know how to defend in this game. You were unimpressed with your forts. Your forts were irritating for me, like quite irritating. A number of times, there was a turn where, for example, I killed most of your mangonels except for the one, and that one was sitting in a fort because I couldn't kill it. There wasn't enough ways to, like, the damage reduction of that fort was significant enough that it was unpleasant to leave that thing there, but there was no way I could actually get into it and kill it realistically.
Yeah. I mean, I think onagers are great because ranges, they come with ranges tech-wise. I'm not entirely sold on mangonels.
I wouldn't tech them again. I'm not sure I think it lost you the game necessarily, but I think the impact it had was powerful, but nowhere near as powerful. It's just more cataphracts and a better tech. Yeah.
And they're expensive too. They're like wood and stone, which are both pretty pricey. I was stone starved very early. I didn't build enough stone at all. Probably because Egypt starts with a lot of stone. It was like, lots of stone. We were also no techs, and I think I didn't realize I didn't have stone cutting till like turn 10. I'm like, oh, I need stone.
Yeah, and you had some stone or maybe the events favored you in stone.
I got event stone.
Yeah, because you got 2 wonders to start with before I could get to 1 for stone. And I know some of that's just Egypt starting, but Egypt starting is 400, and the first wonder you built was 600, and you built another 400 stone wonder before I could start any. So I invested decently early game with stone, and I picked up the tier, and I do feel like the tier 2 wonders were very impactful for me.
Yes. Yeah. Not getting Acropolis, not getting Ishtar were big misses on my part.
I wish the wonders were a little more balanced between each other. You know what I mean? Like there's very clear some wonders that are good and some that are total garbage.
Yeah, like no one's worried about Lighthouse in this game. So.
Yeah, although at some point I felt like I almost built that at one point. I was actually iron starved to build that because at one point I was considering it because I was making so many resources off those that city with the upgraded pearls was very profitable for me for a long time.
So what was your strategy? Because I was going the Kushite rush into cataphracts, into Mangonel's cataphract Mangonel attack, and military victory. That was the plan. So what was your play?
Yeah, so I was attempting to. I'm playing with the conceptualization of unique units of where they actually fit. And my thought process was something like my unique unit is an axe replacement. By ignoring axe, I can ignore that entire tech line and go for some more interesting techs along the way instead of that. So my thought was Rome has unit production. Investing heavily in unit production is going to allow me to grind out my opponent. If I can also, via picking up nice laws that are doing lots of good things and not going down the melee tech line, get the same melee tech unit that I could skip, I might be able to get ahead science-wise somewhere, was roughly the thought process for that. Afterwards, it was a lot more responsive. It was something like, I can only build Hystastus here, and he's got Kushite Cav out. I'm going to attempt to stalemate that until I can catch up to something later. So I spammed a bunch of forts, stuck them up with Testado or whatever it's called, or Testado, where they have 60% range resistance on top of that. And that did by and large stalemate you a little bit, and then
I had no way to break in.
Yeah, and the onagers were like, just because ranges are so powerful, right? It's a production multiplier. So I had onagers. That was my quote unquote ranged unit. The problem is you can't push with them ever, right? You can't you can't move forward, do a little bit of damage, and set up. And then the only part of this game that I'm actually proud of myself for, or look back and I think, that's a good decision, Filthy, was at some point I said, I cannot survive his massive units if I allow him to keep massing these better tier units. I'm going to deliberately, although I understand these trades are not good trades for me, I'm going to attack out here repeatedly just to push him off these, not allow him to get your siege engines onto these hills and pressure me out of this.
That's absolutely the right call. My entire game plan was your city is in sniping range. I'm going to set those mangonels on a hill. I'm going to get a fort, and then I'm just going to slowly, inexorably grind on in. Yeah. You did a great job of busting out, trading, forcing me to sort of trade units. I think.
God, those were brutal turns, though. I would like open up I'd open up my game and load in, and it would be 17 deaths. And I'd be like, "What do you mean 17 deaths? There's no way that I have 11." Yeah, oh my God, your route trains are so nasty.
Turn 105. Oh man. Yeah, that one will live forever. Yeah, no, and I think you were trading. I think I remember counting the units. It was like you killed 77 units. I killed 91. I think had we checked the math on unit strength, though, you had killed more because I was losing cataphracts to horsemen and onagers.
But I think
your polyvolleys just destroyed stuff. They are terrifying.
Yeah,
those things before.
Those things are really interesting. I think if I were to do this exact game again, even with the strategy I had, I think in that mid game where I spammed so many Hestasis, I think I should have spammed spears and axes, because I think the production cost of a Hestasis is 120 and a spear and axe is 80. So I think quantity wise, like I think the spears were basically as good as the Hestasis versus your very heavy Kushite cav.
Defensively they are, well, offensively they are. Defensively, since they're Kushite or range, they are not as great because the lower unit strength. How far off were you off 6 laws? Because I was expecting Legionaries, honestly.
The biggest limiting factor for me was, well, first of all, Legionaries are insanely expensive for production cost. But like I'm not imagining this. It's not like
they're 160. They're cataphract cost.
Yeah, okay, exactly. So the most expensive unit in the game, essentially. Like Polybolus, for example, are 120, I think.
Kushites are also 160. So
yeah. But they don't do anything. There's no advantage to
Polyvolleys are 120. Holy crap!
That's what I'm saying. There's no advantage to a Legionary compared to any other unit I can build for fighting the composition you had. But your question of that, the actual problem for me was culture in my production cities.
Getting too strong. Because drama comes in with that early Odeon.
Yeah, well, I think some of it too was my capital city was never military producing till the very, very end of the game. So where the initial found of a city seems to have a big, it's like, I don't know how many, it's there from the beginning of the game. So it gets the culture levels much more efficiently or much more rapidly, perhaps in other cities. So I was attempting to capitalize on Rome's champion cities for my production, and my cap was not a Rome champion city. So it slowed down my ability to get to those laws. And I didn't have inquiries because I didn't play a faction that has access to inquiries outside of scholars. So again, your science was ahead of me. So you hit those law texts faster. You had a cultural upgrade in your capital faster than I had in my secondary city, for example, or my third city. And then, okay, let's see anything else that sticks out as particularly interesting. I found the late game, yes, the Polybolus were pretty fucking good. I have no idea if that's the right way to say it or not. So I'll just keep saying that because that's how I've been calling them, but I have no idea. They were decent, but they were very, very vulnerable to cataphracts, right?
Yeah, cataphracts counter, and that's why personally right now I've just been beelining cataphracts first because it feels like they counter everything, and their counter is buried at the sad end of a terrible tech path. So
yeah, and I'm not even convinced that's actually a counter. Like, yes, I'm sure
it is 100% versus them, so it is a counter because they're 16 strength effective against cataphracts, so they are very much a counter. It's just
let me clarify that, right? Which is that the problem with a unit counter in the late game is armies are not made up of units, they're made up of unit compositions. So, for example, the cataphract, it might counter siege in the sense that it has additional damage versus siege, but it basically runs over everything that isn't a spear, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think that is the same as of the pikeman. The pikeman counters the horse, but it doesn't run over everything that isn't a horse along the way.
No, it's just going to die to macemen, right? So,
exactly.
Swordsmen, which have a benefit against it. So.
Yeah, or just any of the other, like for example, ballista, right? Or, any of these anti-infantry kind of things. And there's a lot of anti-infantry things in this game, or at least things that are fine versus that. So
your crossbow were really effective as well.
It was a desperation play because it was it's a fairly cheap unit that has plus 50% versus melee, so at least could do some damage to those cataphracts. The cataphracts were Cataphracts and forts, I was just like, oh my god. If you watch this from my point of view, like every turn is me starting the turn with going, I fucking hate cataphracts. Like it's like it's just like that over and over and over again because it's so frustrating. Like every one of your guys, it's like I did 2 damage to it. It's just like, well, okay.
Yeah. Well, you did a great job attacking when I wasn't really ready for it, and I had to scramble and panic, and I think I kind of warped my economy a little bit where I just stopped my workers. I was order starved quite a bit. I think, as you said at the end, you had a 30 or 40 order advantage over me.
Took me a while to get there, though. I think we were pretty close to parity because I think your state religion was doing work. I went through it one turn. I don't remember how far in and counted. And every one of your cities was your, or every one except one or something was your state religion.
Huge.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
You can definitely do a divine right monotheism play where you go, where I guess you go poly first, get your shrines everywhere, and then swap to monotheism, so you kind of get the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
And then divine right, so you have a pagan state religion, and that can actually work really well. It's just a lot of setup.
Yeah. Did you ever consider boats to bypass this frontal champion city?
Oh yes, I had a Droman started, canceled, and then started again. At one point, I was like, I'm gonna go kill that Colossus because I don't know, for some reason I wanted to kill the Wonder in production, but.
Oh, that would have been mean.
I eventually ended up canceling it because I was like, I need that wood for money for the cataphract engine. And it just didn't seem like, I thought about it, like I'll set up boats and then just go around, but like you would just be able to move your units back and like it wouldn't make that much of a difference. And
I had that conversation a couple times as I was sitting there, not only the boat conversation, but also there's a couple times where I could keep attacking you with, or I could have run cataphracts or horsemen deeper into your territory. And I honestly ran into the issue. I'm like, what's the benefit of running around in his territory? His units are going to be able to reach me because everything in this game is super fast. I'm going to do one turn of preventing an improvement from having impact, and I'm going to lose the unit for it.
Yeah.
Do you have any sense of how to defend in this game?
The best I can do, I think, is the sort of fort siege standoff where you've got a line of onagers and a line of mangonels, and it's really rough now that mangonels actually, when you upgrade to them, they unlimber and you have to re-unlimber them. That's horrible. Oh,
I watched that. I watched you do that because you're. That's another good point you bring up. You did 2 upgrade turns, and I was so blown away by this because in my mind, upgrades in this game are really bad because it costs you the same. So if you want to upgrade an axe to a mace, it costs you the same amount of resources to upgrade it as it does to build it. But you already built the axe. So you're not only getting charged, you're getting charged twice in the production and twice on the resources almost. So when you did you had 2 turns, or you had a turn where you upgraded like 5 or 6 onagers or something, and you had a turn where you upgraded 5 or 6 horsemen into cataphracts. And I was just like, my jaw was like on the floor because like my resources were so tight this game to build the units I had that there was never a chance I was going to be able to upgrade until much, much later. So I was kind of blown away by that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the nice thing with upgrades is they preserve unit promotions. So that chariot can turn into a horseman, that can turn into a cataphract, and promotions are a huge deal. I definitely did not promote enough in this game, partly because someone kept killing all the units.
But that's why I rarely invest in promotions or even generals in the late game, is because you're not wrong. You get some stacking bonuses on a unit, especially when the unit count is real small, and it's very difficult to deal with. Very difficult. But the number of units we were trading, if I'm losing 17 units in a turn, what the hell is the point of investing a couple hundred training in a general and an upgrade?
Yeah, that's fair.
So for me, it was hard to find the resources to want to invest in that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I should have, instead of upgrading, just sort of took all that and kept producing.
I'm not saying it was wrong or right. I was in that moment when I was struggling so hard with resources. I'm like, how the hell can you afford that? So I was unimpressed with how my champion city stood up to I built walls in it. So it was a champion city with walls, which means it was, whatever the hit points of that is going to be. It's
40 or something.
Yeah. And it stood up 1 turn. Like it took, I think it took 1 attack on the previous turn. So it was at like 27 of 30 or 20, some version of that. And then you alphaed it the turn after. And I'm just like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, that's 1 more turn than like my city, which was not a champion city, did not have walls, which we just walked in with.
Well, the polyballs first, that to me
is brutalized that city. I was like, what?
Yeah, I personally don't like that mechanic. Although when I played a game versus Alex a couple weeks ago, and one of the Alexes, there's 2 I learned, but anyways, one of the Alexes I was playing against, and he did a lot of force march polybolus hits on my cities, and I did watch with some confusion prior to that, with all my spies in his cities, him invest in wall, moat, and whatever the third one is, tower or something. And I'm like, why is he doing this? I'm like, good, I need time to catch up. And I think that was his attempt to counter the strategy he was going to do to me that I didn't know about before that, which was these shots with the polybolus. Now, I'm not sure what would have saved you, honestly. I don't know what the like when I looked at that, I had my polybolus were hitting with promotions are a bit weird because you get the free one. The free one's great, as you said, because it already starts assigned. And maybe in games where not every second of every one of your units coming out needs to be immediately on the front line, maybe you have the time to take that second promotion. But I often was losing units that never got their second promotion. But that said, irregardless of that, when those polybolus were hitting your cities, they were hitting your cities for 6 of 10 per polybolus.
Yeah, pretty rough.
Yeah, like I don't know how you defend a city against that.
Yeah, I think you just kill the poly before they reach the city.
But you can't. Once the field was uncluttered enough,
clear, you're screwed. Yeah. That city's falling. Yeah.
Yeah, and they I mean, I was producing them in like my back 2 cities or something. I just they're speed 2, which is nuts. Which is they're as fast as normal infantry. So anyway, it was some of the late game mechanics seem rough to me. I feel like cataphracts have no realistic counter. I feel like inquiries don't really have a good counter either. And then polybolus's impact on cities just seems like you might as well not have it. The city doesn't really provide any defense at all, which is why I struggle so much with defense. Because like it's a tile-based game. One of the defenses in a tile-based game is to restrict the number of tiles your opponent can attack you from. You can't do that except by filling those tiles, which is a fine strategy except for route. Route punishes you for filling the tiles that protect your cities, which is just like, what do you do then? How do you protect a city? So.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it is just raw units, and I mean, definitely. I think just building number of units. Your thoughts on upgrading actually make a lot of sense. I think I had over-indexed on some games where I had standoffs where upgrading didn't matter because like you want the strongest alpha you can.
Yeah.
But this wasn't really an alpha game. This was a bloodbath grind down. Hundreds of units are dying.
So it was a terrifying flex for sure. Like I don't and certainly timing off of upgrades does matter. So like for example, if it's going to take you 10 turns to get massive units that you're comfortable attacking with, then sure, makes total sense.
Yeah, but I mean, at that point, we weren't in timing attack territory. We were in continued bloodbath territory.
Yeah. So this was probably the closest game I've had. And to be fair, in defense of the current balance of the game, although I think there could be a lot to be done with that still, this is the most back and forth I've ever had in a game. Have you had games where it was so much back and forth where one side
not this much? No. Yeah, no, I remember when your initial attack that I repulsed with Kushites, like I was not very many turns off of having them, and I was like, oh, this is just in time.
Yeah, there were a number of times. Oh my God, so many turns. Like, there were a couple weird tech decisions I made this game. One of which was before probably that turn where you killed 17 around the 105. I don't remember which one. I'd have to go back and look at the replays on this, but I chose to go for the law that allows me to carry over orders.
Elites.
Yeah, and I'd gotten one turn of a okay carryover, and I needed like one more because the plan was to alpha as many of your units as I could, which were more powerful units, to limit your ability to counterattack with that. And it was like you got some upgrade. I think that was when you were upgrading your onagers into mangonels.
Yeah.
Or mangonos, whatever they are. And like I waited the one turn as you upgraded them and then let you limber them because they were unlimbered,
and
right?
Went, yeah.
And then I went, and that was I'd gotten it, I think the same turn that you had gotten the upgraded path, I'd gotten the tech that allowed me to conserve the orders. And I needed like one more turn or 2 more turns tops to get to like the maximum orders for the alpha. And I ran out of orders in that strike. So there's a number like really close timing windows. You're talking like I almost got you as your Kushites are coming out, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure. I mean, I don't doubt your word that it was close to that, but I mean, like there's a number of these timing windows, which is good. If that type of thing is regularly occurring in the game, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I elites I think are a trap actually because they're good for one alpha. If that alpha doesn't win you a game, now you're saddled with its law. That's actually you're never floating that many orders, right? You never want to just not use orders.
That's funny. I don't see it that way. They were helpful for me a couple. I don't know. Even in this game, they're helpful at least more than one turn, couple turns, because you do as you go through your kind of decision tree of how you spend your orders, you do get down to the lower value orders you spend. And banking those for a turn where you care about them, that does come up. And certainly, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I don't know. I never had a situation where it's like I have orders that I'm banking because I didn't have Acropolis, I didn't have Decree, I didn't have Statesman, and I think you had Orator at the end as well, which was just really amazing. So I never was banking orders. Guilds, which is the opposite, I think, of elites, was actually really, really helpful because it's minus 10% rebel chance. So as I was dealing with family unhappiness, it actually eliminates it entirely because it's a flat 10%. It's subtractive.
What else does Guild do?
It also gives you -1 discontent from town.
I see.
And it costs money instead of training.
Gotcha. I was very annoyed with rebels. I regularly get annoyed with the rebels because I don't know. To me, 5% is 1 in 20. That's what 5% means. I feel like 5%. Granted, unhappy families are more than 5%, but like, man, the amount of turns, and I was like looking in your base, and like, there's one turn I remember. There's like a slinger attacking your capital, right? And I like look, and I spawned a crossbow. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me?
I didn't upgrade my sling. I could only build slingers. I didn't have anything beyond it. It's
that's interesting.
Advantage of tech specialization that the rebels will randomly pick your highest tech for that unit, and if it's a slinger, it'll just be a slinger.
But maybe I did have archery tech at some point. I must have.
You had crossbow, so right?
Well, but crossbow isn't a byproduct of cross. Even though it's not in the tech line, it's for your rebel chance. Oh, that's annoying. That's interesting. I didn't know that. Okay. Yeah. Okay. There's something else. I think this is going to be one of the games where, as you said, you have your footage. We're going to try to release both on my channel to put through kind of both sides so viewers can watch both sides, and they're going to have, I guess, if they're already hearing this. But I think this is going to be one of the games I'm going to go back and watch a big chunk of this on your side. I think playing against, I find you a very challenging opponent. So playing against competent opponents for me is the best way to learn to what to do. So I'm very interested to see this from your point of view, because this game was a weird one for me. And I feel like a lot of my things mentally have shifted from a game like this. Certainly cataphracts are now, inquiries have already shifted to a pretty prominent position in my mind. Cataphracts have been cemented as the premier late game unit in my mind off of this. And I've reevaluated how I'm thinking about at least some of the unique units, like Roman unique unit, for example.
Yeah, I mean, I also learned from this game, I think the biggest thing is invest in that production. The Holy War Trade League was amazing for a while, and then it was like, you need to pay 2,000 gold to rush this cataphract, and coming up with 2,000 gold times 3 every turn was just becoming impossible.
I was wondering when the hell those were coming out. The other thing, I found a game with Alex, you had the state religion very early. I liked the ability to rush specialists with orders.
Yes.
In the game where like the war isn't hot, it's a nice, you have your units building, you have your units massed up front, you have your workers moving around, but that's a nice thing to do with those extra orders in the mid game to just get those specialists invested off that tech. I found that very powerful, that law, for me.
Yeah. I had an order governing my Sage's seat for a while and was rushing inquiries from 3 turns down to 1. The unhappiness does build up, but it is actually super effective. The other fun thing is Rome, if you actually found your capital as patrons, which is counterintuitive, you can then just rush with gold projects, because inquiries are projects. So if you have a scholar governor as a patron, you can rush with gold, which is kind of cool as well.
Yeah, I've played patrons exactly once, and I played it in an Assyria mirror, and I didn't have it as my cap, so the rush ability didn't seem very good. But yeah, I guess I could. Rome for me, I have a hard time walking around. I like I don't know. Maybe I'm overvaluing decrees and overvaluing the number of orders. But that was the other thing. Like, a fair number of my cities were statesman cities, which means that each of them adds an order.
Yeah, no, I love statesmen. I think I'm slightly in favor of sages right now, just because inquiry is way too strong.
Yeah.
Especially if you can't kill the inquiry city, it's a tech lead and everything snowballs from there. But
yeah,
statesman decree pumps are really strong. I think Assyria without access to either of them is really hard to justify playing, because it's like, well, I can't decree and I can't inquiry.
Yeah.
I'm very sad now. So
yeah. Any other thoughts on from you on this? Anything else that stood out to you as particularly interesting in this game? Anything else that you're like wondering how I did, or why it turned out that way? Any thoughts?
I mean, I think it was a great game, and I think your attack timings were really good in terms of just not letting me get that critical force that I wanted to have. Where my ideal state was, I'm going to have Maginals on the hills, I'm going to pour in with cataphracts. He's not going to be able to do anything. And I could not get set up. I kept getting frustrated every time. I was like, he's attacked again. I have to push this back.
Yeah, from my point of view, it was so desperate. So I'm glad it came off as annoying to you, because from my perspective, I'm like, fuck, I'm gonna lose all my units again, but I can't let him take that hill.
You were making that hill over your city. I was trying to get it. One thing I wanted your feedback on is what did you think of when I bought all those tiles and minored that city in the middle?
Yeah, so I initially thought you settled it, and then when I realized what you had done with that, what did I think of it? It was really annoying. Certainly, I struggled all game with city happiness, so I was acutely conscious of the small bonuses and combat detriments I was getting from family happiness. So when you took those tiles and then were able to utilize those tiles as solely your tiles, I was kind of not annoyed by it, but it was problematic for me. It was a struggle to deal with that. So I think that was fairly good. And I don't think the first round of tile buying isn't that bad. Like, I know it's not one. There's a lot more than one for that, but it isn't that bad to do. So I think that was pretty powerful in my opinion for that.
Yeah, it gave me a ton of visibility and let me heal and like just sort of set up and as you said, like I even remember a couple turns where I was like, 10% from being in this family's territory. I didn't even realize that bonus, and it adds up in terms of like,
oh my God, it adds up.
I was trying out turns like, why can I kill it with this? I was like, family bonus. Forgot about that.
Yep.
So, yeah.
I found forts, I found them impactful in this game. I know you DM'd me a couple times on Discord saying, like I was trusting in my forts too much. I found your forts annoying, and actually more annoying than your forts from a general strategy point of view, from my perspective, is I don't think there's a counter to forts. Because with the one, so I do like that. I like the idea of burn, which is the new change that allows pillage
Super
to not
pillage,
end turn. It's not well. You say it's super pillage. I think I'm not sure yet, because the problem for me is I think 100 military points is too much.
I never tried it, so I don't know actually. So
it doesn't end your turn. It takes an action. It costs 100. It takes one of your action pips and costs 100 military points, which I think is too much in my opinion. But the big problem is. There was one of the last turns of the game where you killed all my crossbows. I had that decision of I wanted to leave those crossbows safely in my own cities, waiting for your cataphracts to wreck through all my units, and then counter by deleting your cataphracts with my crossbows. And what eventually decided me not to do that was like, I need to kill these stupid forts. If I let him just take position, leave these forts empty, not pillaged, and don't commit these, he's just going to end up with cataphracts and forts, and this is going to be a bloody nightmare the next turn. And then not only did you kill all my units, including those crossbows, you then one turn repaired the fort. You repaired it I had to kill your unit on the fort, then occupy the fort tile, spend an action to break the fort. And then I didn't even get an entire turn where that fort wasn't usable for you, because you then took the tile back, which wasn't giving me any bonuses in your land, and repaired the fort before I could go again. And I'm sitting there like, wow, that was not worth my time. So I suspect that forts and roads, need something that means they cannot be instantly repaired. So I think probably forts and roads should be able to be burned or pillaged permanently. Because unlike other improvements, you can rebuild a fort very rapidly, but there would be a turn where they'd be shut down. Yeah, same with roads, exactly. But there would be at least a turn where that wasn't the case. So I think those probably should be full on, when they're pillaged, they're gone kind of deal. But,
I think that makes a lot of sense.
But yeah, so your forts are impactful, and it sounds like mine were fairly impactful.
As well. I mean, I just could not attack into it. I mean, I felt like I had technological superiority. I've got my cataphracts ready. I've got my horsemen ready to go. And I just can't attack because you've got Testudod,
Hastasis
and forts and onagers back there, and I'm just like, this is going to be brutal. I remember mathing out some of the turns. I'm like, I do 2 damage.
Yeah. There's a lot of that. Although on the flip side, there was a turn when you broke my front line, right? And then I had that line of 4 onagers that I had moved back because I couldn't. And you just I think it was probably one cataphract just ran down the length of them, killing them. I was just like, oh no, it's so horrible. So
I should have beelined for them earlier. I was running out of units at that point, and the rushing cost was too high, and I just wasn't patient enough to wait for the 4 turns it would take to make a cataphract. So I was buying, and it was an interesting game because Yeah, I remember that moment where I realized, oh no, he has cataphracts now. I am screwed. Like,
It didn't register quite as cleanly for me. I was like, finally, tech parity. I can fight back a little bit, but I'm like, I'm already down a city. This is pretty bad. And then like you ran out of units like the next turn. I'm like, what?
yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, unit strength is so much, right? Like 10 strength just destroys a 6 strength unit, and you had superior production and it just came online. I think you were only able to stay alive because of that production as well. And I don't think it registered for me that, like, where are all these units coming from, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's horsemen. Every turn you're making a horseman and sending it to die because
Yeah. Because exactly from my perspective, it was like, all right, he's one turn away from taking this hill. I'm going to take catastrophic losses every turn to push him off that hill. And like sooner or later, from my perspective, I'm like, I'm burning my reserve of units. This was a dense area of melee units that's slowly unpopulating. I'm slowly losing is how I was mentally interpreting that.
Yeah, but you were winning because you could produce faster, and my production was hyped up on Holy War Trade League, and the spiraling increasing costs of that were like, it used to be 1,000 gold to rush a cataphract, now it's 2,000, so I can't rush as many.
Yeah.
And just I need to sell everything every turn, and my entire economy stopped. I think you had your workers still working all the time and just
Yeah.
building things, where mine all stopped for since like turn 105 when you attacked.
Did you use any windmills or watermills that game?
I didn't use any of it, any significance. Like by the time I got them, my workers were not doing anything. I think I had one or two up, and they're great, but they're still pretty awkward to use, in my opinion.
They're awkward to get set up because it penalizes you for the same spot that you're incentivized
Yeah.
to build your things in already. You're now incentivized to drop the watermills on, which then removes the improvement that you're already incentivized to build, which is a bit of a pain in the ass. But they were quite powerful for me once I got them going. That solved my iron problem. And it turned out I didn't have an iron problem once I reevaluated how bad Legionaries were. But at the time, I thought I had an iron problem, and they absolutely solved that. So it was kind of interesting to me.
They're great.
Yeah.
That whole tech line I think is really good now. And I mean, personally, like I would want, if I replayed this game again, I think I would definitely. I had made a terrible tech decision at the end. I went for monetary reform, which let me buy orders, which was never useful at all. Because I didn't need orders, I needed units. I should have gone for polyvolley and just been able to have. I think that would have given me a way to kill your crossbow without pain.
Yeah.
And the Legionaries were great, but they just did not, like, 10 strength versus 8 strength is still a huge advantage for that 10 strength unit. So
Yeah. The what I'm concerned about is that the late game optimal unit mix is cataphracts and polybolus, because they're the only two 10 strength
they're the
units
only
in the
10,
game.
and 10 is just,
It's a
unit
lot more than
strength is
8 when it
everything.
comes to this.
Yeah, unit strength is everything. That's why promotions are good in small conflicts where you can build up, because promotions can take a 6 unit to an 8 unit strength, or a 10 unit to a 12 unit, and that is very, very strong. Obviously, when you're trading as many units as we were, promotions, as you rightly point out, don't matter. The only other thing I think I could have done, definitely should have gone for the point win earlier, when I was putting you on the back foot. I just didn't realize how, like, I didn't realize the only reason you were still in the game was because of your enormous production that was letting you throw units, trade at loss, but still like whittle down my force. So I never got to the point where I have 20 cataphracts and there's nothing you can do. It was always like, I have 5 cataphracts, I have 6 cataphracts, and like they kept dying and I had to build more.
It's both weird and interesting. I don't know if I dislike it or not, so I haven't posted. I keep posting when I do these balance reviews. I keep posting that defense is hard in this game, but I haven't come out yet and said defense is too weak in this game, because I don't know that the game needs defense to be good. But by and large, the best defense in this game is exactly as you described, which is you attack aggressively into units so they cannot get a critical mass, so they can then kill you before you can do anything. Which is such a weird defense, right? Like the defense here is you alpha enough of their units so they can't alpha you. Like, it's so weird.
Yeah, I mean, I was wondering whether I should have actually retreated when I did, or whether I kept trading, but I was like, there's too many hits coming there. I'm going to get completely wiped, and then I'm dead. So I might as well pull back with what I have. So until you get to the point where you have a complete wipe, and you can just sort of have that back and forth, I think it's worth. But yeah, I should have just started building the religious centers. But those were two victory points each, and I could build 3 more. 2 wonders, and then I would have natural culture take over. I could have just built all that earlier while I was pushing you in instead of later. You wouldn't have been able to stop it very easily.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. I was definitely extremely concerned about your religion, because I'm like, late game, this is production. This is easier access to the points off of culture. If you'd wanted, you could have gone orders. You went science. It's late game. It's like all these things late game. And you're right. Actually, with four religions, that's four wonders.
I went science just because I could not, it's hard to find the time to build those temples. And the cost, yes, they give orders, but they're so expensive to build. It's like 60 wood or something like that, or the monasteries are wood and the temples are stone.
Yeah.
And just again, I don't know, I didn't have the orders to do that. I didn't have that many temples. Discontent definitely spiraled out of control for me. And I could not get my families happy at the end.
Yeah. That was me mid game. I actually got my families happy late game with the paganism, which was interesting. I learned a ton in this game. There was one other point I wanted to bring up, and then I think that was it for me. Which was it? What the hell was it though? Oh, we were just talking about it too. Unit promotions. This game was maybe an outlier to this, I'm not sure, but like when the fights are really close and the game is totally about alpha striking, in other words, every unit that can reach the combat basically needs to reach the combat every single turn for the maximum damage, because there is no defense really, besides bunking up when you have maybe a tech advantage or a bunch of hills or something, right? But when you're on parity, there's very little that you can do to defend directly. I feel like the promotions that units come out with out of a city should not take their actions to assign, if that makes sense. So I
agree. It is too hard to assign promotions. It takes an order and it also ends their action.
Yeah, that's the brutal one.
Brutal.
Yeah.
I would love if you could promote without ending the action. I think that would help make promotions more impactful. I agree. There were many times I was sending in units that
could have been promoted,
has a promotion or even has two promotions, but I don't have the tempo because I needed to keep attacking.
Me too. And from that, I think promoting a unit, if you pay the training cost and you want to promote a unit, that should still take an action, right? This is some but when coming out of the city and you've invested in the governor that has equestrian and you built 2 elder officers, it feels bad to then throw that unit into the fight without getting a chance to assign its promotions. And the early game is like this too, right? Those free, this probably happens to you all the time in the early game too, right? Your efficiency demands that you keep fighting the barbarians, and the only 2 actions you really get to take are attack or heal. There's so rarely do you, I oftentimes will finish clearing 2 or 3 camps where I'm settling, and then I'll spend 4 turns healing the thing up and assigning all the promotions that it's banked up that I could never use ahead of time because they weren't impactful enough to justify a turn off.
Yeah, I think making it still cost an order but not ending your term would go a long way to helping.
I would like that too.
And in terms of defense, I think the mid game actually does kind of stall out because it is hard to break into onagers and forts, which I think is the only effective defense. Chariots are not going to kill onagers and forts. Horsemen are not going to kill onagers and forts either, just because it's too strong. Cataphracts definitely will. Polyvolley will. But there's kind of a point where you have nothing to attack with, so I almost wonder whether a strategy of I'm going to tech to onagers quickly, get some forts up, get some hills, get to a defensive position where the opponent has no really easy way to attack into me because orders aren't that plentiful. So he'll slowly move across and hit a couple of my onagers. All the other onagers will just blast them because they're all there, right? They can all attack at the same point. And then I tech to cataphracts behind that, and then I attack off of that. That seems like a strong play.
Yeah, I think so if you can figure out the advantage you can generate by doing that, then because I think you're right. There is a mid-game stall slowdown, but late game, it doesn't seem like anything actually mounts a defense, which is maybe necessary. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason cataphracts and polyvolleys are 10 are just they are meant to end the game, right? If you think about this from the single player perspective, here are some super units that you can go use to slaughter the AI and break through anything, and they do that. So.
And maybe those would become more okay if inquiries aren't in the game, for example. I don't know. I'm not sure, though, because the problem with the super unit is the super unit then becomes the strategy, and the with the capitals and quotations, right? There aren't other things you will do. There's no cost-benefit analysis of when should I go Bodkinero versus barding. It's just always the answer is barding.
Always go barding first.
Right, and that to me, when a strategy under pressure, and the pressure here is the fact you're playing a player, not an AI, right? So the player is competitive with you. When strategy under pressure reduces to a single best path, that generally means imbalance to me. So what you want is strategy under pressure to then have counters. So opponent's done this is my optimal tech. opponent's done that, that's my optimal tech. Not always cataphract, for example. And
I was playing a pure horse strategy, right? So I had horse UU and a horse unit, and I didn't really have anything apart from horses, and I guess a couple siege units.
Yeah, but my counter strategy for that as a player is non-existent. I have spears, and after spears, I have nothing. Despite that, you have an 8 strength ranged horse archer and a 10 strength range or 10 strength melee routing horse. They're both horses. They should have a huge vulnerability. I should be able to build anti-horse, and my anti-horse are spear and a little bit later, but not really. Yeah, well, pikemen are a million years later, but actually camel archers are supposed to be anti-horse. But
camel archers are very strong, yeah.
But the problem is they require a resource that isn't on the map, and then you can't be circumvented until much, much, much later in the game where you get the every city can build that. So by the time I could build camel archers, we were past the point in the tech tree where they would be relevant to your cataphracts. So
and they're only 5 strength, so anything else kills them. So.
Which would be fine. I don't mind counter units, but there weren't camels on this map except in the very center for the area of the map where we never got to expand to.
Yeah, this map was weird in that we had kind of like we were all off from each other and then a narrow choke, and there was no other path. So, and even the water was very narrow. Like I could have built 3 boats and walled you off in the water.
Yeah.
So,
anyways,
it was a fun game though.
I was gonna say I enjoyed it immensely. I learned a lot from it. I was gonna ask you. I thought I'd save it for this. I thought about asking you earlier. Would you like to play another one?
Yeah, I would be happy to. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. All right. Well, I appreciate you. I know this was a little bit longer than we'd initially thought, but I thought it was a pretty good post-mortem of the game. Fun to talk about. So.
GG's.
Yeah, GG to you as well, man. Good luck in the next one. And
well won.
Appreciate you talking through it with me. And again, you've been nothing but what's the word I'm looking for? A wonderful opponent to play against. You've been extremely humble about it. Really, really willing to talk through things. I just appreciated learning from you. So thanks.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah. Cheers.